Welcome to the Cerebral Palsy Perspective, an optimistic look at life, movement, and doing hard things our way. I'm your host, Chad Williams, and today I'm without my co host, Daryl Perry. So I'm going to use that as an opportunity to share a little bit about my story for any new listeners who might not be familiar with my background and my experience with cerebral palsy. So I'll start by saying I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at the age of 2. I have spastic hemiplegia, and I had a stroke either just before or just after birth. And, that was determined through some scans that I had done. They were able to pinpoint that stroke as the cause of my cerebral palsy. But it was identified in those early stages when I was missing milestones. I wasn't walking or doing other things that would be expected. And so with the help of my mother, who was, my biggest advocate, she worked with me to help me walk and overcome some of those deficiencies, and worked with doctors to figure out why I wasn't reaching certain milestones or why things were different for me. And so, with her persistence, they identified that I did, in fact, have cerebral palsy. So I have, from the tight muscles on my left side, I had a left foot that turned all the way in, and I had a limp, a difference in leg length, and so I had special shoes that I would wear with a thicker sole on my left foot to make up for the difference in leg length. And I had a surgery to correct some of these things. Just before 5th grade, I had a surgery to break my left foot. They broke it and realigned it with pins so that it would be straight. And they did a tendon lengthening procedure to help with the difference in leg length. So that was obviously very helpful. But prior to that surgery, I lived just a couple blocks from the school. And so, most kids get up, walk to school, and I still had to take a bus, even though the school was on my street. So I knew early on that things were going to be different from me when I had to, take that school bus. So that posed some challenges. I had, obviously there were kids that saw me as different and picked on me, but I also had a lot of people that cared for me, a lot of wonderful friends, great support system at home. I'm reminded of a couple stories early on. There was one particular kid who would throw sticks at my feet and watch me trip because he knew that with my balance and with my cerebral palsy that I would fall. And so he, found fun in that. But I'm also reminded of the fire drills at school. When there's a fire drill, everybody tries to get out of the school quickly. And so there's kids moving down the stairs fast, and teachers were worried that I might trip and fall down the stairs. And so they set it up so that a janitor would come to class and sort of come get me and bring me to a different area in the school. I'd watch the fire drill out the window so that they wouldn't have to worry about me falling down the stairs and possibly getting hurt. So I had people who looked out for me, and I had people that picked on me, which, that's common for a lot of areas of life, but made things difficult at times. But then after that surgery, things were a little easier. I've shared on social media and in a previous episode, kids invited me to play football one day prior to school. And while I had a great time, the principal called us down, and I got in trouble, and the kids got in trouble for including me because the principal saw me as a liability and told the kids that I shouldn't play football with them. And, you know, in one sense, it's an example of a teacher, you know, making me feel less than at a moment when I'm trying to fit in, but it's also an example of classmates that I had that cared enough to ask me to join in. So there's that, balance again of, yeah, there were terrible things that happened, but there were some great things. Um, in the following years, I went on to run modified cross country. I ran for 1 year. Uh, I had my best friend had encouraged me to run cross country, which was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to, take part where I could to be like others. And so I ran the cross country season. I finished last every single race, but I was out there and I was able to be a part of something, and that was special. And I built on to that the following year as a member of the modified basketball team. I still remember that season. It was a special thing to be part of. I didn't get much playing time, and I only scored 2 points for the entire season. But I remember those 2 points because my teammates and the community, they all came together to celebrate that moment with me. All season long, everybody was waiting for me to make a basket. And so once I finally did, I remember I got a standing ovation because everybody was so happy. And so that's, another moment of support that I had, which was, special. But I also, I had to work through physical therapy. I had physical therapy a couple nights a week. We'd have to drive to after school, and I had a physical therapist that came to school for a lot of the earlier years. And so there was that element of it as well. There were sort of hard moments that I had to work through that I kind of kept to myself, but there were a lot of great experiences that I got to share with friends and family. And I was able to do a good job of that for a long time. But as I got older and I was less active, I have a desk job, which I'm very grateful for. I've had for over 20 years, but that caused me to be less active, as is, natural as we get older. But with that, I got to a point where my muscles were very tight, and I went and saw a specialist, and he had told me at that time that I needed to either, find a gym or go back to physical therapy because all the spasticity and tight muscle issues that I was experiencing, they weren't going to get any better. I was going to need to find something to help. And so at that time, I decided I wanted to go to the gym. I had been through so many years of physical therapy that I wanted to sort of put a positive spin on it. I can go to the gym and work out and get stronger and feel like I'm doing something good for myself. And at the same time, I can alleviate some of these things that I was working through with the tight muscles and from not being as active. So I did that for a bit. I had to, adapt and make some changes to certain exercises and sort of find my way through what works for me and doesn't cause pain or, issues. So I sort of had to adapt in the gym, but I worked with a personal trainer. I worked with a couple over the years to try to figure out what could work for me to give me the best chance to be active and participate in the gym without causing more issues. So I did that for several years, and that went really well and got me feeling good about myself. And then COVID came and gyms shut down. And that caused quite a downward spiral. Without being able to go to the gym and with being at home and back to having a lot less movement and activity, things got really tight. And I found myself in a position where it was extremely hard just to get out of bed in the morning. My hips were very stiff and tight, my hamstrings, up my back. I had a lot of issues. And I have 2 children. I have a lovely wife and 2 children. And, my children were younger at the time and they're looking for me to be active and looking for me to play. And I'm having trouble getting out of bed. And it didn't take them long to catch on to that and ask me, like, Dad, are you having a good day today or a bad day? And there was a mental struggle with that as well. Outside of the pain that I was in, I just found myself in depression because I knew that for the first time in a long time, my cerebral palsy was sort of winning. I've always had a mindset to not let it define who I was, but I was getting to a point where it was doing just that. It was getting the best of me. And so I knew I needed to find something that I could do to find my way back. I have 3 brothers, but one of my brothers is very active in running. He's running Ironman races and doing different things. And we're talking back and forth, on social media and through text and everything. I'm seeing these great things that he's doing. And he shared this one video at an Ironman, and he's coming across the finish line. And it just looked incredible. And I knew that I needed to find something like that for myself. I needed to pick myself up, and I needed to find a way to feel better about myself. And so I started to look online. What's something that I can do that'll challenge me and allow me to feel good about myself? And I came across the Spartan race, which, if you're not familiar, there are different levels, but the Spartan race that I was looking at was a Spartan sprint, which was 20 obstacles spread over a 3-mile race, 3-mile run. I hadn't ran since the cross country days back in middle school. I had lifted some weights, but I knew this was going to be a challenge. There were a lot of elements to it that were tough. I had seen it on TV, on Sports Center and different things, and I always thought it was great. But at the same time, as somebody who had cerebral palsy, I also thought, like, that's not me. Like, I can't be a Spartan. And that sort of became the point. Like, all right, let's see if we can do this. Let's become a Spartan. You want to find your way back. This is one way to do it. And so I sent a text to a trainer friend of mine, and I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Will you help me? And he was on board right away. He's a great guy. He's helped me in training throughout, my journey with cerebral palsy in the gym. And so once he was on board, I knew I was in good hands. And he came up with a plan to get 3 or 4 nights working at the gym. And it was hard. We started working on legs and things, and I remember there were many nights I could barely get to my car, and I had a lot of doubt. Can I do this? Did I bite off too much? But right from the beginning, I also had a lot of support. I could see that he believed in me. I could see that my wife and friends and family, they all had that belief in me. So even though I didn't necessarily believe that I could do it in the beginning, I had people that lifted me up and believed in me until I got to that point. And so, that was special. And as I started getting through these training sessions and running on the treadmill and doing all these different things, I started to see, this is possible for me. Um, one of my favorite parts is rope climb. With the different obstacles for the Spartan, I had to learn how to climb a rope. And right away, I was like, had flashbacks to fifth grade when we had to climb the rope for school. And all these people are classmates, all these classmates are flying up the rope or getting up the rope with no problem. And I couldn't get up at all. Gym teacher had to, put his hands under my feet and try to help me. And even with some help, I couldn't do it. And so when I learned that that was one of the obstacles, I was, immediately terrified. Like, how am I going to do this? I can't climb the rope. But that trainer friend of mine, he came up with a plan. He stacked up some mats and he took it just like my gym teacher did back in fifth grade. He put his hands under my feet and he worked on it with me. And we worked on it for weeks. And it was tough. And I couldn't do it. And so there were nights I would leave just, sort of defeated. Like, here we are again. Like, I can't do this. And I still remember, the night that I did get the rope. We tried several times and I couldn't get it. And I was frustrated, and he could see the frustration. And he tells me to go cool down on the treadmill before I leave for the night. And as I'm on the treadmill, I'm furious because why can't I do this? I've put in the work. I'm doing all these exercises. I want to be able to do this. I'm going to try one more time before I leave tonight. And I asked him to record with my phone this rope climb because if I can't do it, I want to see what's happening so that we can try to figure out how to fix it. And he starts recording, and sorry, it's a little hard even still, but he starts recording, and I got one pull on the rope, and I got a second pull, and next thing I know, I'm halfway up the rope. And we're yelling, he's yelling, we can't believe that I'm up there. And then I get a little nervous because I'm like, oh, now I gotta try to get down. How am I gonna get down? And I was able to get down, but the whole thing with the rope is, with my tight muscles and with the way that my feet move, I'm not able to do these rope hooking techniques that most climbers would use. For me, it's all hands, arms, or nothing. It's all upper body. And so just that hand over hand to get up there takes a lot out of you. And so to get down, you gotta, the hand under hand to get down, you still have to hold yourself for a second if you're not able to hold the rope with your feet. And so we worked through that. And after that night, once I knew I could do it, anytime I went back to the gym, I'd run right over to the rope and, fly right up the rope and get back down the rope. And so that was a special moment for me. But even then, as I worked through the training, there were a lot of nights where I would be extremely sore. My hips would be sore, my hamstrings, my glutes. And so my trainer, he knew how to do trigger point therapy, myofascial release. So he had told me, like, I'm going to help you, any way I can so that you can get through this Spartan. And, in working with my doctors, and I had used some muscle relaxers and some other medications. And then with his help with this myofascial release, we were able to have a plan that, got me right up through to the Spartan. And I went on to finish the Spartan. But in doing so, I found a love for running that I would not have expected. As I trained, I decided, like, I'm going to try to run a 5K. I need to run a 5K for the Spartan, so why not sign up for a couple local ones just to get that practice? And from the very first one, that I ran, I was hooked. I'm coming around this corner, and there's people holding up signs and blowing bubbles and cheering, and I'm like, I'm out here running in a race. I had been through all these hard things, and here I am, like in the middle of the pack in a 5K race. And so that was so special that I went on to run another 5K every month that year, and now I have over 900 miles that I've ran since I started running that year after COVID. I'm going to be running races all year this year. I have a lot of special races that I'm going to run, but I don't do that without still, some adaptation. I have custom orthotics that I got. I had to see a specialist because when I started, I had all this pain in my feet. My trainer would like wrap my feet for me in special tape and come up with these ways to take some of the pressure off my feet. And I've, met with a specialist and got custom orthotics. And so that made a big difference there. And then with the hip pain that I experienced, we found a hip brace that works. I wear some other compression and along with the hip brace, but that sort of keeps everything in line and allows me to run with minimal pain. Depending on temperatures and things, I still have some issues. I have to listen to my body, and I have heat and different things that I use when things flare up. But overall, I'm able to go out and run and compete. This past year, I got a first place age group finish, top 20 finish overall out of a couple hundred runners, and first place in my age group, which to think about that is special too. So I'm finding ways to push forward and still run. But with that Spartan, others through social media and in the cerebral palsy community, they started to see my story and pay attention. That's actually how I met Daryl, the co-host of this podcast. He invited me on to share my story about what led to that Spartan. That's a great episode. If you want to go out and find the link through Daryl's social media, that was a couple years ago, but that was a great episode, and that was the start of something really special. There were a lot of other people in the cerebral palsy community that reached out and followed and wanted to know more about my story and ask questions, and that was amazing. It's still amazing today. I have people that reach out all the time. But with that, I wanted to try to figure out how I can give back to the cerebral palsy community. And along the way, I developed a brand, Doing Hard Things My Way. Under that brand, raised money last year. I organized a 5K with proceeds going to another cerebral palsy nonprofit, Cerebral Palsy Strong. And I just recently launched a $500 scholarship under my brand that will go to an adaptive athlete. You have to be a senior going off to college, participate in sports. And I already have over 60 applicants. It was just a couple weeks ago that the scholarship became funded and launched, but since the launch, there's over 60 applicants, and so in May I will pick a winner of the scholarship and present a disabled adaptive athlete with a $500 scholarship to help them in their journey. It goes back to finding ways to give back to the cerebral palsy community, and that's really what this podcast that Daryl and I started now. How can we give back, and how can we be a resource for others in the cerebral palsy community? We're a couple episodes in, but I think we've already shared a lot of great information. We have a lot of guests lined up that are going to come on and share their experience with cerebral palsy. And, we want to hear from you if there's topics that you'd like to hear us talk about, questions or concerns, anything that you think would be helpful. We want to be here to be that resource for you. And so we're going to continue to grow this podcast, but we just wanted to take a moment to each sort of share a little bit of our background so that as you listen to these episodes, you can kind of understand where we're coming from when we're talking about cerebral palsy. So I hope today, by me sitting here and sharing just a little bit more of my story, I hope that's helpful. And, as you listen to this or after you listen to this, if there's things that come to mind, things you want to ask me, you want to reach out, I'm more than happy to have conversations or respond to your questions, anything I can do. But I'm glad that you're here listening, and I hope you'll continue to listen. Share this with others who you think could benefit. But, we're really hoping to grow this and make it something special. So thanks for your time, and hopefully you'll listen next week. We have a episode that drops every Monday. So look forward to interacting with everybody that's listening. Thank you.